First two. Oh man, we got some strings now. No, not like dog wants to come in here. No, you don't want to come in.
Yeah. What if I told you I'm not alright? I mean, I don't feel dead, but I'm not alive.
Wait, what?
What if I told you I'm not like you and the shit I've been going through, it'll probably make you cry.
What?
What if I told you I'm not this, and the person you think you know don't exist? Look, I'm not who you know, I'm not who you wish, I'm not who you want me to be. What you want from me isn't this. I grew up in church where I couldn't be myself. I felt like a prisoner, couldn't leave my cell.
I wonder if this is worse than the Macklemore song.
But on the real, this is not new, this is not a phase. I grew up
we still haven't
different
gotten the
than I was
Eminem part
raised.
yet, though.
But still, what if I told you I'm out of place? Wait, what if I told you that I was gay?
It's the part where
I
they
love
drop-
the emphasis on it.
it's the part where they drop. It's like, what if I told you I was gay? All right, we still gotta get a little shady. But, oh my God, this is still not even half over.
Oh, I can't.
Okay, I don't think I can. I'm sorry, I can't make it any further. I can't. This is just tedious.
It's terrible. It's really
wow.
terrible.
All right, I honestly forgot what we were talking. Oh yeah, so we were.
We were doing your number 5, yeah.
Yeah, I
Which
finished
is
talking about
Mac Mommy,
Macklemore,
yeah,
and then I
yeah.
somehow was talking about how did Eminem do anything to embarrass himself this year, which was that.
And it turns out, yes, he did.
See.
Yes, he did.
So you're number 4.
Yeah, I would like getting back to talking about good music.
Yes, anything other than that.
Anything other than that, wow. One thing. Okay, so that this is a decent transition. One, that song was pretty overbearing, and just not heartfelt or relatable at all, or any good quality. But I do think that a rap album that came out this year that was pretty much the opposite of all those things is Polo G's Die a Legend, which I don't think you've heard.
I have not heard that. Actually, I don't even know the name, I don't think.
So Polo G is a Chicago rapper who was born a year after than me, which just really just rubs it in how old I am. I feel old. I know I'm not, but it's just like, wow, rappers are younger
You're
than
fucking
me.
like a decade younger than me.
I know. No, it's just like that, that when rappers are younger than you, then you start feeling, you know what I mean? Same thing with athletes. But he's from Chicago, very much in. So he's 20. He grew up listening to a lot of drill music, as a lot of people around my age did, I'm sure, in Chicago. But the difference is he kind of has an approach where it's not drill music. His approach to like trap is inspired in the vein of like more melody driven, which is what we've been seeing a lot, especially this year with the emergence of guys like him and Roddy Ricch. I'm a huge fan of. Quando Rondo, like guys like No Cap, guys like just pretty much every guy, not every guy, but a lot of rappers between the ages of 16 and 24 have been really taking this like melodically driven pop rap infused with sing-songy sort of stuff to trap music. The difference with Polo G is he's just a really great fucking rapper, and his melodies and his singing is also really good, and there's just a level of pain and trauma in his music that is pretty tangible, and you can hear it in his voice. And I know that's something that disregard the low rating on RYM. I mean, it only has like a 3 even, I think, but this guy's the real fucking deal, and he's my favorite new rapper that I've heard this year. And I think I'm gonna shout out Chops here real quick. One Chops on the boards, because he said that in his review something to the effect about it's the way that like Polo G can rap, where it's like almost like he has a lump in his throat, and he really is able to like articulate the pains of of growing up in Chicago, while never like fully absolving his own part in that, because he's made mistakes. Like, he went to jail like a year before the album came out. But this is a really emotional experience as an album. Like, there are songs on here that are super catchy. I mean, Pop Out was one of the bigger rap songs this year. It was all over. It got top 15, I think, on the charts. It was all over all of the big, like, Spotify and Apple Music playlists, and did massive YouTube numbers, all that stuff. It was a huge song, but even that song, like, you probably haven't heard it, so I can't describe how it is, but for me, it's like the hook of the year, that track. But also, in that same sense, like, there's just this level of, like, pain and emotion under it that is tough to articulate unless you really heard it. But once you hear it, it's, like, instantaneous. So the album's pretty short, and it's just, like, basically his narratives of what street life is like, in Chicago. And I think this album really cemented him as one of, like, the most promising young talents in rap. There's a lot to do here there's a lot of, like, stuff that you would see in other trap albums, like flexing and, it's the similar type of beats. They're a little sparser, but, like, similar type of beats, and, like, the influx of singing where he's, like, very, like I said, very melody driven. But I think he's kind of like, it sounds pretentious, but he kind of, to me, is more like a singer-songwriter. And there's a lot of the beats on here that are, like, somber pianos, and, like, the bass doesn't hit as hard. Like, this album puts a lot of emphasis on his lyrics. And those lyrics are great. And they can alternate almost in the same song. Like, there's a song called Deep Wounds toward the end where he's singing and he says, like, something to the effect of, I came a long way from depression, like, all these riches keep me smiling. And even in that moment, like, it seems like he's trying to convince himself of that fact, but he doesn't sound like he came a long way from depression, and he certainly doesn't sound like he's smiling on a lot of this album, because there are these tracks that have great hooky choruses and these beats, and they wouldn't be out of place, you hear it, they wouldn't be out of place, like, hearing out of somebody's car window or hearing out a party. But there's also lyrics in there like my homie died at 16, like, I was up all night, kept seeing death in my dreams, stuff like that. Like, it's not glamorizing any of this stuff. It just presents the streets of Chicago and, like, what he had to go through in remarkable detail. So it's my second favorite rap album of the year. I couldn't put it down. I think everyone who doesn't see, like, what the big deal about it is, to just, like, listen to it more, because I couldn't stop listening. And I was invested in this guy since I heard Pop Out. I was like, oh, this guy's really fucking good. Like, I think he could be a star. But when this album came out, and it did really well for him, and it had a couple of singles off it that, got some traction, I was kind of shocked, because it just didn't sound like something that... It sounded like something that definitely fit in with what's going on, but his approach to it is just one with, like, a lot of honesty, and there's a lot of pain in there. And he's not the only guy to do that. Like, guys like Lil TJ are doing that too. No Cap, like I said before, is doing it. Roddy Ricch, to a lesser extent. Roddy Ricch is more, like, pop, popular. But, I mean, Polo G, to me, is one of the most promising new talents in hip-hop. And he's so young, too, which really encourages me about, like, his songwriting potential going forward. So, yeah, I've pretty much gushed about this album for the last few minutes.
I should check it the fuck out. I think I may have downloaded it. I don't know. I feel like it came out, June?
I mean, I will say, the people, it's got, like, a pretty okay rating on RYM. I mean, for a trap...
Under 3 right now.
Yeah, but for a trap album, like, I will say that all of the people that we interact with, like...
No, I think Chops recommended it to me, and that's why if I had it downloaded,
I
access to my laptop right now, so I can't really see. But I think I may have it downloaded. I did not listen to it if I do. But you make it kind of sound like either, like, Welcome to Fazo Land or maybe something by Tree.
It's like, not, I will say, it's not like Welcome to Fazo Land in the sense that the beats are very different, so I don't want to give off the wrong impression. Like, a lot of the beats they're dark and they're kind of sparse, but they're really catchy. And they just, I can't explain it, but they just have this like somber tone to them, even when he's rapping about topics that aren't necessarily like somber, like topics that, you know, whether it's like fashion or what have you, but it usually loops around to something where even if the song is like Pop Out is a pretty, you know, is a song that I would hear 10 times out of 10. I'm like, it makes me happy. Like, I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs of the year. But at the same time, there's a bit of menace to Pop Out. And there's like a bit of pain in there that, you know, you'll just catch certain lyrics now and then and you're like, oh shit. And then you kind of like, you know, there's just, it's more than what a lot of 20-year-olds I think are making right now. And I say this as somebody that loves trap and loves, you know, a lot of different things about it. But for the people like on RYM or in music in general that look at a lot of hip hop from, you know, places like Chicago or Atlanta, and they're like, "Oh, this is not good," or like, I would just point them in the direction of this album, because if there was any trap album where the lyrics take center stage, is this one.
I will absolutely look for it. I feel I should have. I kind of wish I had beforehand. It sounds like, yeah, sounds like good shit. I really don't have anything to add.
No. Hey, look, I didn't have anything to add for your last one, so these are personal lists for a reason, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of reading through, like, Class the King has a pretty good review of it on our land right now. I'm kind of reading the lyrics seem pretty evocative, and
yeah, it's definitely something that I was hooked on this year. Like
the comment box is fucking annoying. I'll say that.
You see me yelling at people in the comment box a little bit, I think. So
not unique.
Not unique, guys. Pretty boring stuff, right? Oh, I
anyway,
can't.
Number 4 is totally not unique at all. It's Tyler the Creator, Igor.
All right.
Very boring album.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not unique. Definitely not interesting. You
know. This was an album actually that I was not as high on when I first heard it, because I was so thirsty for it when it came out. What if I Was Gay started playing again because I opened my phone?
It's haunting us. I'm telling you, it's haunting us.
I'm going to have to play this song for my wife after this podcast, and she's going to hate me for it. No, I'm trying to look up Igor on my phone, actually, because I do have it on there. I just want to look at have the tracks handy, because this was an album that I was not super into when I first heard it, because I was so thirsty for it. I downloaded the initial first thing that looked like the leak, which was like, oh shit, it's in Lossless on SoulSeek, but it was not it was like a transcode or whatever, so it was actually fairly low quality. And this is actually not to come across like a sound like geek or whatever, because I hate when people are like, leave it 1-star reviews of podcasts on iTunes, like, oh, you guys need to get a real better sound engineer. I could hear this crackling and this and that. It's like, shut the fuck up, get a life. But like, or people who like jerk off over Steely Dan albums, like, because they sound so great, and like, you're just like, you know, on either end of the spectrum, it's like, I find it really annoying. But there are certain albums that you actually like need to have good quality sound to really appreciate, and I like sound quality. I feel like this is one of those albums, because it is insanely layered, insanely textured, and there's so much going on that like a low quality version of it does not do it justice. Because when I heard it again in proper lossless audio, like, you hear so much more going on in every corner of this album. Like, I thought, like, he's definitely gone, like, Flower Boy was leaps and bounds from Wolf, which was leaps and bounds from anything else he had done before. And this is leaps and bounds from that. Like, the level of composition and the level of things he's doing with these songs is... And my other complaint when I first heard it, like, I guess I had the same complaint everybody else had, is, oh, Tyler's voice isn't that good, like, singing voice. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It's
it
good
really
enough.
doesn't.
It's good enough for these songs, and I kind of appreciate, like, part of the reason Flower Boy was so good was he was calling in ringers. Like, he would have Frank sing, he had Caliuchis sing on See You Again, he had Rex Orange County. Here, he's putting, like, he's using, obviously, a lot of features, but he's putting a lot more of the weight on his shoulders to actually carry these songs. And I feel like that helps the overall, like, once you understand what the narrative of the album is, and it's not a hard narrative to understand or anything, but it kind of helps it because it makes it feel more raw and emotionally fragile.
I 100% agree. Like, I think that, I mean, just the way it started off, you could tell this was going to be like a producer's album. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, Flower Boy was such. I mean, Flower Boy was an amazing album production wise, but I just mean it was such a. There was a lot of emphasis on Tyler, and I feel like there's an emphasis on everything else but Tyler in a sense. I mean, his singing is at the forefront, but there's so much going on that it's not the only thing that I'm necessarily paying attention to. Whereas I think that's easier to
Right.
say
Like,
with
Earthquake
Flower
is like
Boy.
a symphony, dude. Earthquake is like a
Oh my
symphony.
God, it's beautiful.
That's a definite contender for my favorite song this year. The way that he has so many elements going on that song, so many different vocalists, and he weaves them all together, so many different parts.
Even just like
Earthquake is
the background stuff and the way that like the beat will build and then stop and then you think it's gonna be the hook, but then it's not, and then the hook will then come in like a little bit after that first
yeah.
time, like when Tyler's doing it, and then you got Cardi, and I don't even know what else to say about
Cardi
that.
used it really perfectly.
Yeah,
You make my earthquake.
yeah.
Uh,
There's
fucking
just Cardi's
the
verse
the track.
epitomizes everything that's good about him.
The last three songs on this is like basically function as a suite for me, which I mean I kind of feel like that was sort of the case with Flower Boy, but I think it's more pronounced here. Like
Hmm.
obviously every Tyler album, track 10 is like a two-parter. Like I feel like this is his best two-part song yet. Gone,
Hmm.
Gone, Thank You. I feel like is just so well put together.
It's
And
my second favorite song on that
yeah,
album.
and then it just flows way super well into the last two tracks. I think Pharrell is amazing on the last track. I have nothing but good things to say about, like, I think the fucking Kanye part is hilarious.
Great, it's perfect.
I think the fact that if you look up the fucking book for the album, it just says Kanye lyrics unavailable.
I mean, the thing about Tyler now is he's really. I mean, he had already come into his own, but now he's just like showing. I feel like he's like showing off. Like he's really
Yeah.
showing how much of a creative, talented guy
He
that he
feels like
is.
more of a composer, honestly. Like, in
Yeah.
a way, it really does. Like, these feel like compositions in terms of, like, the only thing I can really compare it to, like, once these songs really started setting with me, I really started sitting with them and, like, feeling out how many parts there were to him, how many, like, people were involved and how he was assembling it, was something like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, in terms of, like, something like All of the Lights or So Appalled. Like, I mean, like, those are, like, So Appalled's a rap song, but you know what I mean, where it's just like
Yeah.
so many different pieces are being assembled.
It does have a little bit of a grandiose like vibe to it, where you get the feeling that you're listening to. And it's cliche, but it's like more than an album in a sense.
I mean, I guess.
Like,
Oh no, go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say I get that vibe from like Are We Still Friends, too. Just not in the sense that the track's pretty simple. I mean, there's not much going on from a lyrics perspective, but if all you're taking from this album is the lyrics, then you are not listening to it right, in my opinion. And that's a pretentious thing to say, but
Well, I get.
the lyrics are not the focal point,
No, I
nor will they be.
like, that's the one criticism you could levy at it, is that, I mean, especially compared to Flower Boy, the lyrics are not. I mean, they're not the focal point. They're not as important. Like, I feel like they serve their purpose and everything, but it's like clearly, like, Tyler's rapping was better on. Like, he's hardly even rapping on the album,
Hmm.
and like there were actually great rap verses on Flower Boy. Like fucking the first two songs, like the first verse on Flower Boy is how much. Uh, I completely blanked on it, but it's like how much land. It's like something about driving till I run out of road. How
Yeah,
much
yep.
uh,
The first
out of
track, yeah. Forward, yeah.
land. Yeah. Well, where this flower blooms, I think it is. No, that's the second track. But either
No,
way, like,
forward is the first track, I think. Yeah.
and I think Boredom has a great rap verse on it too.
Yep. And Mr. Lonely, 911, Mr. Lonely.
And I don't want Mr. Lonely.
Yeah.
Whereas I can't really point to any great rap verses on Igor, but I think that Igor overall, in terms of the way he's doing, like, he's putting himself, I feel like he puts himself out there more almost in a different way. Like,
I would agree with that. I
so,
think he's like, it was not a dangerous album because a ton of people will still listen to Tyler, but an album that's just not going to click for a lot of his older listeners in a way that Flower Boy was more immediately like lends itself to replay value, you know?
yeah, like there was definitely Flower Boy was more inviting, whereas I
Yeah.
feel like this is pretty far left. Like this is, I mean, first, like again, I think Earthquake is catchy as fuck, and there are like hooks all over it, but they're not, for the most part, not immediately apparent, and a lot of what, like if you're like a fuck, kill people, burn shit, fuck school, Odd Future fan, like if that's what you went to them for, like really, there's not much for you at the end of the decade if that's still what you're listening to them for. Like,
Seriously.
I mean, I guess there might be like, I don't know what Domo's doing right now, but Jasper Dolphin solo album. I don't know. But yeah, I love this album. The last two Tyler albums have been fantastic. I never thought I would. Cherry Bomb made me really mad when I listened to it, and I was just like, I'm fucking done with this guy. But even now, like listening to the Cherry Bomb instrumentals, I see more what he's going for. Like, so I've even kind of retroactively come around on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
No, he's the last couple years for Tyler have been up there with any years, for any artist this decade, I think.
still want him to do a fucking collaboration album with Wayne. Like, I don't think it'll ever happen, but those two tracks they've done together are like two of my favorites, both of them. Still want him to do the album with Rocky, and I don't think that'll ever happen.
That should have happened.
That should have happened. The dumbest thing that made me laugh the hardest in the past couple of days, I was actually watching the video for Potato Salad on YouTube.
Yep, great video.
Yeah, and one of the comments was the judge was like, "You're sentenced to 50 years or whatever," and then the next line was Tekashi 6ix9ine. Your Honor, ASAP Rocky's purse is actually a satchel.
Oh, it's great. It's the way they play off each other they're having a lot of fun on that song. I love that song.
So yeah, great album. I don't know, like it took a while. Like I guess I didn't really like Flower Boy as much at first. I mean, I liked it at first, and then I grew to love it. Like I said, I had not an ideal listening experience listening to this first, and then when I did, so I guess it'll grow we'll see with time if I like it more than Flower Boy. I'd say they're probably equal at this point, like in like different ways.
Yeah, no, I prefer Flower Boy by a little bit because I think Flower Boy is almost like basically a masterpiece in my view, but Igor is a really tremendous piece of work that I'm not going to listen to as a collective whole as much as Flower Boy. That's the only reason why I would put Flower Boy like a little bit above it, and because like you said, the rapping.
Yeah.
I relate more to the rapping, and I
like think about like Flower. There's nothing on Igor that's as relatable, that's like repeatable or relatable as the rapping on like Pothole or Boredom.
100%, 100%.
So I mean, for his like, but again, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything as outwardly gorgeous as the way Earthquake is layered on Flower Boy. As much as like Flower Boy has like is nothing like tons of gorgeous moments. I think that as like a producer and an arranger and everything, Tyler has like progressed even further. So yeah, that's what I gotta say on that. All right, your next one.
My number 3 is FKA Twigs with Magdalene. I believe I pronounced it right.
I think it's Magdalene. I think you're close enough. I did not know she had a new album. When did this come out?
It came out about a month and a half ago.
This is what happens when they banned me from ROM for 6 months. I don't.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty late release, and I mean, I was a fan of FKA Twigs already. I was pretty much on board from the early stuff, the EP1, the LP1, all that. But this is an interesting album because it just blew me away, and I kind of have a problem talking about it because it's like this really, like, just raw, personal, like, intimate album. I feel like it's almost too intimate, like I'm intruding on her, like, her life and her mental process when she's, like, talking about this. But she's got some great producers, like Nicholas Jarre's on here to produce. I mean, Noah Goldstein's on here. We know from Kanye's stuff. Yeah. She produces a bunch of her own stuff. She's got Skrillex on here. She's got Arca on here. She's got Cashmere Cat
Future,
on here.
interesting. Future is, I just know, I'm
Oh
going
yeah,
to
oh yeah. Future as is the only feature on the album. The only feature, and I think it's the first feature she's had in any of her albums.
Cashmere Cat on here, Jack
Yeah,
Antonoff on
Ja-
here,
I think he's got a song in
Michael
there.
Uzuwaru on here, Hudson Mohawk. There's a million people on
Oh,
here,
so
dude.
this is a big album, even though it's only 9 tracks and 38 minutes. Like, there's a lot going on this album. And I think she has a hand in production on every song, I believe.
Soundwave, like the TDE producer, or
Yeah,
the TDE
Soundwave. Yeah,
engineer, yeah.
yeah.
Betty Blanco.
There's
Okay.
and I will say about the Future song, there were gonna be people that were like, "Oh, it's Future on it, so it's not gonna be that good." Future, his verse on that's great, and it just if you listen to it, it fits perfectly in the context of the album. I mean, the way that song is about just like faithfulness and cheating and not even that, just like personal demons, things of that nature. There's a lot of songs on this album that are just on the surface level about relationships and intimacy, but it's there's a real high sense of like drama on here, which you would think I wouldn't like because I don't know. I came into it kind of worried that this was going to be some like just very very artsy, self-serious work, which I shouldn't have had that thought. I mean, it is serious, but this is a big album and it's so beautiful. Like, it's hard to talk about it without just I'm going to continue to say it's beautiful, it's intimate, but the hooks are also there, the songs are also there. Like, my favorite song is Sad Day, and that's a really really I mean, she herself said it in like the Genius annotations. I think she did Genius annotations for it, where she was saying that it's like a very like personal song, a very like it's kind of like unflinching, and but it also has like really beautiful quality to it, and it's really catchy. Just like the refrains that she comes up with, and just like how she puts songs and hooks together that you don't think you would find yourself walking around repeating in your head, but like they are. So I think it's a really outstanding album. Like, there's not much I can say that a million professional reviews haven't already said, but super emotional. The sonics on this album are crazy. There's like this beautiful aspect to it, but also this like high level of drama, and like there are still the unique soundscapes that made her production like so interesting in the first place, with the electronic elements and like the glitchy elements, and there's like straight up art pop, and the alt R&B that was like she was categorized as in the beginning of her career is still here. But yeah, it's I mean, if you look at the descriptors on RYM, there's like a million descriptors. So it's hard to narrow this album down, but I think it's a crazy good record, and I can't put it higher than my 2 or my 1 because I don't listen to it quite as much as my 2 or my 1, but it's a amazing body of work for an artist that keeps getting better.
So I've had a pretty okay time studying this record. It's
Yeah.
narrated similarly to a much better seat at the table's narrative attempts. Is detailed, heartfelt, and is capable of certain holistic moments when you're able to really feel it. However, after going through all that once, I have no idea why I would ever listen to it ever again. Musically, it's not as unbearable as the first album. I have so many issues with Arca as a musician and a producer, I wouldn't have enough fingers to count them all, even if I'd have the worst double vision of my life. Cool that at times it can be purposeful, but it still just goes through you, maybe even to the extent of trivializing what Twigs is capable of doing with her voice. It might have something to do with the fact that this is a work of like 20 different producers. Who knows, really? More importantly, who cares? It's a frustrating experience overall, since she's a huge talent capable of many different things, but in general her music is basically a talent showcase instead of a piece of art. Combine that with some legit narrative making attempts of this album, and you get something that you have to be very self-involved to actually empathize with, however well-meaning.
That's a
Well,
point. That's a 0.5 review.
yes. Well, that convinced me. That made perfect sense. No, I wish I knew about this. If I knew this had come out, I would have listened to it. I
It's not as
think she was ever actually going to come out with another full length. So, because this was supposed to come out like she was supposed to come out with shit like years ago, right?
yeah. She came out with an album in 2014, and then she had an EP the very next year, which was great. And then she hasn't done anything since then. The difference between this album and those two albums, while very still unique, experimental, the whole nine, with the producers and Arca and all that stuff, they were a lot more immediate than this album. This album took its time to like really sit with me and grow with me because it's very super 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 intimate. Like I keep on saying, those two albums there were like bangers on there that would be ready for like, I mean, club ready is a little bit of a stretch, but they were like they were very immediate and catchy songs and like hooks. But this album to me, it kind of just gives me like Bjork vibes. I don't want to say it because it's a very cliche RYM thing to say, but there's like some Bjork on this album that I can.
At least you didn't compare it to Kate Bush. That would be an even more RYM.
That would be an RYM thing to do. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. So yeah,
I will check it out. Well, my number 3 is also a female artist. Female artist that's definitely come under a lot of criticism for authenticity, but I feel like this album definitely should shut all that shit down. And I might be a little surprising to see me on the list because I've criticized her in the past too. But once I heard the title track from her album, I knew everything was, definitely changed my mind once I heard Lovers by Taylor Swift. Wonderful song. And, couldn't shake the feeling though that I'd heard it before, and then I realized that it actually was "California Lawn" by Jenny Lewis.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about this. And full disclosure, I will say that I am positive on the Taylor Swift album.
I bet you are.
Yeah. I can't say I've listened to it in a while, but I do.
No, but what I want you to do is listen to that fucking Taylor Swift song, and then listen to "Hollywood Lawn" by Jenny Lewis, and tell me that she did not fucking steal that entire goddamn song.
You know what? I believe you. I'm writing it down right now.
No, and this forwards a conspiracy theory I have, which is that because Ryan Adams produced the Jenny Lewis album, therefore I think that Ryan Adams ghost produced the Taylor Swift album. But they made him sign a fucking non-disclosure agreement because obviously that would be horrible publicity for her. Mm-hmm. So that's just a conspiracy theory I have. Anyway, fucking my number 3. This was a lot funnier in my head. I was going to do a whole thing about like singer-songwriters and females who come under thinking for authenticity. It was going to be Taylor Swift, but actually my number 3 is Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey.
Yes. So. That's actually my number 2, so it's perfect because I would go next with my number 2 anyway.
This came across so much better in my fucking head. I had this whole thing, but and I'm actually rehashing the joke I did from like a previous year-end thing where I had Reputation as my number 1.
Yes, but, see, that was a lot funnier because Reputation was such a train wreck of an album.
Yeah. And this is also just like that was funnier just on its face, but whereas people actually like this Taylor Swift album, this actually makes me angrier because I feel like she's stealing. Because it actually is not like bad music, but it's also like I feel like she's stealing shit, and it's also Jack Antonoff I think just engineered the shit to be good,
right?
Like,
which speaking of Jack Antonoff,
we're not going to talk about Taylor Swift. Yeah. But we'll talk about Jack Antonoff though because I think he's a big part of why Norman fucking Rockwell is so good. And it's like this album has been in the works for quite a long, at least a year. Like what? Venice Bitch came out like. It came out in like November or October or September of last year. It came out a while ago. Yeah, so this is actually like an old school album build of like letting it wait for a year, which definitely was like I did not know this album was ever going to come out. Like just because I'm so used to getting the single and then getting the album like a month or 2 later. Right. It's either you get the single and it comes out a month or 2 later, or it's never coming, or it just like dies in the when you're like Lil Uzi Vert, and your album's never coming. Seriously. But and I was I guess I was kind of under the impression the album was never coming out either because they had like the Mariner's Apartment Complex, Venice Bitch, and then like a few months later, Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a Woman Like Me to Have. And then nothing. Like the release date came and went, and I was just kind of under the impression that she pissed off her label by putting out all these non-commercial songs, I guess. The thing about these non-commercial songs was they were the best thing she'd ever done. And I was
Agree.
never like super like I thought Video Games was an amazing song.
Yes,
And I was never super into her aside from that, but like I thought she always caught a little too much shit for the Saturday Night Live thing.
I agree.
Which
Yeah.
like I can never tell how much of that was like an intentional like she did something on purpose to make a statement or it was just a poor performance. But it was like for people who were just like, oh, she has no talent, it's all an act. Like I thought that was an insane overreaction. Um, and I feel like if you actually listen, and yeah, I feel like there are other things like Fantana's review I thought was really unfair. Missed a lot of points because if you actually listen to her albums, it's pretty clear that there was like something of value there even early on.
Oh,
And
I agree. I always thought she was overhated, but at the same time, and I liked Ultraviolence, but
I
I
mean, I do think
never.
that the diss that her music is the equivalent of an Instagram sepia filter is pretty funny.
Oh, it's pretty spot on, but at the same time, I don't necessarily look at people who like enjoy her music or her music in general as like, oh, it's like for boring people. It's like an Instagram filter. Like, I mean, just because a diss or like a dig at an artist is apt doesn't mean that you can't necessarily like the artist. You can acknowledge, you can be self-aware about it. And I think this album is a very dramatic and you know earnest album, but because it's so damn good, like that doesn't necessarily matter.
No, it. I think it earns its pathos. It earns its like
Yeah,
emotion. I think it's very smart and so. I think it's self-aware. It's smart. It's literate. It's like I think it's literate and self-aware. Whereas before, I think she was clever.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I
I
can
feel
see
like
that.
there's a depth and a. I feel like before there was a cleverness and a sort of pose towards like a pose that was towards the appearance of life experience, whereas this album feels like it has the actual gravity of life experience behind it.
And I think that that life experience and that maturity is apparent on this album.
And I
Like,
feel like it's matched very much by the music, by the way the Jack Antonoff production, by the way the songs expand, and I mean, like these are still big emotional swings. They're still, but they feel hard earned.
they do, and there are points in the album where there are like big emotional swings like back to back, and but somehow you don't feel like wiped out after them. Like Venice Bitch is the third track on here, and to me that just sounds like a penultimate track, and
Oh yeah,
it's the third song, and that song is fucking wonderful. It was in my top 5 last year, and to be honest with you, if that song came out this year, it would probably be in my top
there are
2.
so many great moments in it. The
Yeah,
guitar solo, the fucking vocal bridge, the
just
just
the
the melody
harmonies
of it. Yeah, the
toward the
harmony.
end in the back, like in the background at the end.
Well, I'm getting high now because we're older.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the whole song, actually.
The fucking quote, the Crimson and Clover quote, yeah, like that's fucking gore. And the way they layer, so and then it's followed by what? Fuck it, I love you. That's also
Yeah.
like super emotionally naked, like, but it doesn't feel like you're being like completely worn out by having those back to back somehow.
No, I really think she pulled off a feat with this one, and I know that a lot of. I mean, I think my second favorite song is The Greatest. The Greatest is another one where
Hmm.
it's a little shorter than that. It's like 5 minutes, but it just still knocks you out with just how beautiful it is. And a lot of critics are basically, and I don't blame them for saying this. I feel a similar way where it's kind of like an out of place, out of time like album where it just feels very of a different era, even down to the cover, obviously. But and my companion piece for it this year is the Tarantino movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Which I have not seen and can't discuss. Which I fucking still because it only played here for like 2 weeks.
Right.
One of the when I had my medical coding exam, so I couldn't have gone that weekend. But I still need to see that. I feel like the out of timeness is very intentional. I mean, the title invokes
It
Mormon
is.
well, so
It's Lana Del Rey at the end of the day. She does give off that
Like
image. Yeah.
anachronism is definitely one of her. That's one of her go-tos. So
Yeah, I think just the reason why I made the reason why I made the comparison is obviously that I'm not going to get into the Tarantino movie too much because I do you definitely should see it, but there's a there's a quality to both of these uh, works of art, for lack of a better term, that's just like some they shouldn't have pulled it off, but they did, and it feels like we're watching something that shouldn't have, or listening to something that shouldn't have come out today, and it's here, and it's somehow doesn't feel like coy or too self-aware, or like it just works. And there's a level of pretension to it, but it isn't hitting you over the head with it, and it just you can just sit there and listen to the album or watch the movie, and it just works. And they're both like one of the best albums of the year in this album. It's my number two, and the Tarantino movie will be high up on my list as well. Like, so that's kind of why I make the comparison, because they're wonderful to listen to and find new details in.
well, I feel like that's a good comparison to make because Tarantino also gets a lot of shit for, borrowing, I'll say, from his influences and openly, playing homage and whatever. And I feel like Lana Del Rey also catches a lot of shit for her inauthenticness or whatever. And like, I mean, for fuck's sake, Radiohead sued her, or Radiohead label sued her,
Yeah.
and all. So she gets a lot of shit for being unoriginal or her wearing her influences on her sleeve and stuff. So I feel, and both are obviously very thoroughly American, and like this is probably her most thoroughly American album. Again, the Norman Rockwell influence, and like Tarantino again, like everything she does is Los Angeles, like very L.A.
Yeah.
I think Tom Sharpling actually is a big fan from the best show, a big fan of Lana Del Rey, and he was defending her even when it was not a cool thing to do, even when the SNL stuff was happening. And he said that she has because he shares my feelings on Tom Waits. He absolutely despises Tom Waits, and he said that she has a quality of like a seedy LA quality that Tom Waits wishes that he could have. That they're both artificial, but there's something about her seedy, like the quality that she's able to invoke that's much more appealing, and feels that they're both kind of going for the same thing, and there's an artificiality to both of them, but she's able to achieve it, whereas he's just fucking annoying, which I'm sure you will disagree. So you find something to disagree with, because I'm sure you like Tom Waits.
I mean, I listened to Tom Waits a decent amount in high school. I like him, but I don't. Honestly, my favorite Tom Waits thing is the Wire theme song. So.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
correct answer, actually. Yeah, season 2 Wire, but
Yeah, that's great stuff. I actually that's a good. It's an interest. I never thought of that comparison, but that's interesting.
but I was trying to bring
She's very California. She's very Hollywood. She's very. I think could seem artificial, but I think on this album.
this album less than that, especially if you take in that it's not an official track from the album, because she put it out as a charity track. Although if you search around for the album, a lot of copies have it. A lot of like if you're trying to steal it, it'll be tagged as part of it as a bonus track, and maybe even is on some issues. Looking for America, because it was right after the shooting, the Dayton shooting and the El Paso shooting.
Oh yeah.
It was it's like, which makes for like, I mean, obviously, Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a woman like me to have is an incredible closing song.
Incredible song.
Really one of the best. But like, Looking for America that might be an even better closing song, and it's like it could make you cry. Like, it's like I'm looking, like I forgot the line is, like I'm looking for an America without the sirens, bullets, and guns, and it's like it's probably like it's the most honest I've ever heard her sound.
No, I really think this is a classic.
No, I agree. And I think this is by far the most complete thing she's ever done. There's not a bad song on the album, which is interesting because I'm going to like the one of the two I have on here, I will say doesn't have a bad song on it, but it has a skip on it. There's nothing I would skip on here. The one thing I will say is it's the one long, like we've been talking about, like Concision and whatever. This is not a concise album.
No.
I would say actually to its benefit in that it does kind of demand you sit down with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is.
It feels really, and once again, I'm going to make the comparison to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I know you haven't seen, but one quality about that movie is it's 2.5 hours, but it feels really lived in. It allows you to sit there, and it draws you in with like its period detail and this and that, and it really allows you to immerse yourself in the movie. And this album, when I'm listening to it, I can't just pick and choose. I have to sit there and really listen to it, and it's a testament to how great the album is that whenever I listen to it, I am listening to the whole thing, that whole hour plus or however long it is, where you're really just completely immersed in the time and place feel of it, and her lyrics still being able to stand out and really pierce your heart.
Speaking of great lyrics, how awesome is it that the first track on this song is a diss on Father John Misty?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's great. It's like, here's one of the best singer-songwriter type albums in recent memory, and Father John Misty fucking sucks. So
Yeah, what does she call him? Like something man child. Your poetry's weak and you blame the news. I forget how it goes. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's great. She's winning points more and more with each career decision here.
yeah, it's tremendous, and I can't say it. I'm gonna repeat what you said about the FKH wigs, or I forget what it was. The G.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good about it. Like, and this was something that I had both incredible expectations for and no expectations for. Like when I heard Venice Bitch, when I heard Apartment Complex and Venice Bitch, I'm like, if this comes out, this is going to be incredible and one of the best things of the year, if not the best thing of the year it comes out. But it's probably not going to come out.
Yeah, that was exactly my take. I'm like, Venice Bitch is one of the best songs I've heard in the last couple of years, but this album's not coming out.
So
Yeah.
incredible stuff. So that was my number three.
Yeah, that was my number 2. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 was your number something else. It was Carly Rae Jepsen, Dedicated.
Yes.
So, and another album
love
that I was not expecting to ever come out, because we were lied to about this one almost as much as we were about Blonde, back in the day. This is I have you partially to thank to get me into this album, because I would have never listened to Emotion if it wasn't for you and GSP and I guess other RYM people, but just like being that. And it's still like it's gotten to the point where I was at work the other day or whatever, and I guess they were kind of like on the smoke break or whatever, talking about one-hit wonders, and somebody brought up like the Call Me Maybe, and they were singing it wrong, and they were talking about, and I like instinctively wanted to be like, she has more songs than that. She's better than that.
Yeah.
Like, no, don't do that. Don't be weird. No one actually knows who this girl is.
No, it's just weird because every time I listen to when I listen to Julian, I'm just like, which first of all is one of the 5 best songs of the year for sure.
Oh, for sure.
How do more people not like her? It boggles my mind because she's such a cult now, in a sense. Like, she has such a cult following, but just like the general world still doesn't really fuck with her, or doesn't really know her music. Let me rephrase that. Just doesn't know her music enough to like her. Because there are songs in this album where I'm just like, how are these not big? Like, I don't get it. But
how is Julian not huge? How is fucking Too Much not huge? First of all, I cannot believe Too Much should be like. I think Too Much might be even better than Julian, honestly. Like,
Too Much is an amazing song.
Too Much is like everything. There's like 50 different best parts of that song alone. And it's like, when I originally thought, I was like, oh yeah, she's kind of doing a dance hall, tropical thing. It's like, no, it's so much better than that. Like, it's just immaculately constructed. It's crystal clear. Like, the vocal highs she hits on that are incredible. But like, yeah, Julian is like everything, like, it's basically everything you would ever want from a disco song she would do. Like, it makes me wish that she did more songs like that, which I guess there were. Like, I guess that was the original direction for the album. Yeah. I think she said in some interview that they did it so well with that song that they didn't really think they could do any more, which is, honestly, if you listen to Julian, it's pretty plausible, because there's so much, like, again, that's the song that's nothing but good parts. The one song I do kind of skip, Now That I Found You, is the one thing that's like it's like there's such a killer run of songs through to The Sound, and Now That I Found You is like, that's the one thing where it's like Emotion is like the first 10 or 11 tracks on Emotion are wall to wall, whereas this one, Now That I Found You, kind of stifles it a little bit.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean, I really like that song, but it follows up two absolute
Oh yeah.
masterclasses. So it's like the
And it's
natural
clean. Like "Want You in My
progression.
Room" is so much better too.
Mhm.
I would say the beginning of "No Drug Like Me" is one of the best things she's ever done too. I think
Oh,
that the way "Take
absolutely.
Me to the limit, hold me down," that's incredible. I think she tries on a lot of new like sounds that I wasn't expecting on this. Everything He Needs, I think, has a lot of really cool. Everything I Need's in "I'll Be Your Girl" to
Oh
especially a
yeah. Well,
very like
the
retro
hookiness.
futuristic. Yeah.
The sorry to cut you off. The like just with the retro vibes, but also just not just not just being like 70s or 80s just for the sake of doing it. She's never been like that. We're an artist. I'm just gonna mine the 80s and not put my own spin on it. Like that song is so damn good. Like Everything He Needs. That was one that immediately struck me as well. I know that we were going off about it in the Discord when we first heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a hell of a pop album. Like
It
Emotions,
really
one of
is.
the best pop albums of the decade, one of the best albums of the decade in general. But this is, I don't put it quite on that level, but it's still an excellent album. I still would give it a 9 out of 10 or whatever. Like it's awesome, and I'm just so happy an album like this exists. You
It
know?
just I mean it just makes me feel better every time I listen to it. I feel like she's a really appealing personality on it. I feel like she's grown a lot from Emotion actually in terms of the way she's able to like her writing. I feel like I mean, I'm pretty sure she writes all of her own shit. She might have a co-writer, but I'm pretty sure she writes all of her own lyrics and stuff. I feel like her writing has grown a lot. Like she still writes about the same topics, but I feel like she's right. So I guess in the same, this is going to be a weird comparison, but it's like in the same way that like somebody like Currency or Pusha T can kind of write in the same niche, like find nuances within the same niche of writing about weed or coke all the time.
Hmm.
Harley can find the same, like you're just writing about love all the time and relationships all the time. It's the same sort of thing. You can just find new wrinkles in writing about it, new ways, new words, new approaches. And I feel like so it's not just like the same kind of rote repetition. And I feel like she does that on this album. Like the songs do all stand out from each other, like, and both lyrically and sonically. The hooks are incredible front to back. It's just really bright. The back end isn't as good as the front end, but there's nothing again. Like I mean, even when I say I skip everything, uh, not everything he needs. Fucking want you in my room, I guess. Yeah, want you in
Yeah,
my.
yeah.
Oh no, no. Now that I found you, I'm sorry. Now
Now
that
that
I
I
found.
found my bad. It
Yeah,
was the third track. Yeah.
it's just like just because I want to get to want you in my room, like or repeat no drug like me. It's just because it's in such high company. Like if that were anywhere else, if that were on the back end, I wouldn't repeat it. It's kind of the same thing for Happy Not Knowing too. Happy Not Knowing kind of reminds me of Paramore, by the way.
Yeah, like what they were doing on their the last
A
Paramore album.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Um, yeah, I really, yeah. It's just everything I really wanted out of this out. There was like it doesn't again. It's everything I'd wanted, but it's not a rehash. Like I don't feel like she's taking. I don't feel like she's regurgitating a formula that she did on Emotion at all. I feel like she takes chances on this album, and I've pretty consistently come back to it since it came out, and I haven't burnt myself out on it, which for a pop album, that's been half a year. So I think that's a pretty impressive feat. And I'm also guaranteed that once you hear my number one, I'm going to be the only person in the world who has the number one and number two that I have because they don't go together very well.
Well, I can't wait to hear it now. Now you've got me anticipating your number one, but I will say that um, my number one is something you mentioned already, and I think everybody who knows me would probably know what it is. And that is Freddie Gibbs and Madlib with Bandana.
Yep, and I could have predicted that, and that's absolutely. I think that's going to be a lot of people's number one. It was weird from when I first heard it. I was like, "This is probably going to be." It was in my top five for a lot of the year.
Hmm.
It kind of just fell out at the end when I decided I wanted to put them on. When I decided about the whole thing about cheating and putting like honoring somebody's whole year or whatever, that's when I decided to do the thing for Makami. And I just decided that I was just kind of going by volume of what I'd played. and I played the Lana album more. I played the Carly album more. I played what my number one is going to be more. And I've recently gotten really heavy into playing Igor. So, I mean, but as far as this is the second best rap album I've heard all year, which kind of gives away partially at least what my number one is. But just by volume of listening to it, it wasn't something I played as compulsively as Pinata, but I can't say that it's significant. In some ways, it's better, but I feel like it's also, I don't know. I mean, it's your number one. Obviously, you talk about your number one, and I'll say what I have to say.
Oh no, I of course, and you know, to your point, like the Carly album's in my top 5. Like I gave it an extremely high rating. The Lana album's my number 2. You know, these are the FK Twigs. I mean, honestly, amazing year for like female fronted like pop singer songwriter music. But this album really just owned, you know, hip hop's. It's my genre right now, and I really think that this album has everything that I want in a rap album in 2019, and that's why I played it so damn much. Like, obviously, I'm huge into, you know, like melodic trap music and that sort of thing, and where the genre is being pushed in that direction. But there's also a big part of me that has like this, you know, old school sensibility, and this album not only has that, but manages to fuse both modern and, you know, old school together in this like gangster rap, you know, package that is wonderfully unique. Madlib comes through with the beats on here, and you know what you're getting from Madlib. You're gonna get dusty sounding, like, you know, beats with creative samples and really, you know, unique, you know, twinges to them. But I mean, honestly, my reaction to this album is just like reading the Nodima track by track review is kind of how I feel about it. Like, there are so many songs where it's just like freestyle shit. He's just singing. He comes in singing there. It's got like a classic like 70s pimp style feel. Love that song. Goes into Half Man, Half Cocaine. Madlib doing the trap beat. Oh my God, Madlib did the trap beat. But then the song just switches, and it has that great hook. But then it just gets hard as fuck on it, and he kind of sounds like a LP beat, like in rap music, in that part of the song. And then it's got Crime Pays, which is one of my top 5 songs of the year, which I think is a perfect song. It's everything that makes Freddie Gibbs great. His flow on there, the way he switches it up. He goes from like slow to fast, goes from topic to topic, manages to tie it in all together, has an incredibly catchy hook. Like, Freddie Gibbs is honestly one of my favorite rappers and just in general. Like, he used to be, it was just like, he's one of my favorite rappers of the decade. But now I just think he's one of my favorite rappers of all time. Like, I really think that Gibbs is if I had to make like a top like 15 rappers all time, like he would be there. And I don't know if he's in my top 10 or anything like that, but he does so many things that I love. I mean, I could talk about every track on here forever. I feel like I'm going to ramble, but Massage Seats, which is such a Madlib beat, like, it's so crazy. But then you just have Freddie Gibbs over it talking about, like, you know, his come up and, like, you know, coke rap stuff. And he's talking about, like, oh, you know, I was getting with R&B, you know, chicks before I was even popular. Like, just talking, like, just doing gangster rap stuff over it. And there's just so many things where he can go from being super serious and introspective to just, like, flexing and talking about, like, you know, his cars, or like, you know, how he came from nothing to like doing well, the usual rags to riches, you know, rap music stuff.
That's one of the things about him. He's so versatile within.
So versatile.
He has such an authoritative delivery, and he's able to switch within. Like, to listen to him, you would think that he only would rap about a certain amount, like a certain type of shit. But like, if just hearing his voice and like not knowing anything, not about what he rap, like his catalog or whatever, if you just heard him like on a song and just heard it from his tone of voice or whatever. But then if you actually listen to him, you obviously realize he can switch on a dime, and like that's one of the most impressive things about him. And I think Madlib's beats, like, they keep him on his toes, they challenge him, they inspire him to come up with more creative shit. And I think he said that in interviews too, is that's one of the reasons he really liked working with Madlib from the start, is that he wanted him to give him like shit that would challenge, like, that you wouldn't expect to hear him over. Like
it's such a high bar, and the fucking beats on this album and his rapping is one of the best rapping performances. And I compare it to Pusha T on Daytona last year, where they're so sharp. The only difference here is Gibbs is impeccable for 15 tracks instead of 7, which is not Pusha's fault, but like it's just Gibbs is even better, I think, or at least they're on the very same level. But songs like Palmolive, like how do you not get washed by Pusha T on that track? Speaking of Pusha T, and
yeah.
like Freddie Gibbs's verse is
Also, I like how you washed Palmolive. Nice.
I didn't even intend to, but yeah, like how do you not get washed by Pusha T, who comes through one of the best verses, maybe of his career on that track? It's incredible, the imagery, and then how he goes from one topic to the next. Freddie Gibbs' verse on that. First of all, he starts it off with what do you say? Kane season, I fucked the pastor's daughter in 2 Jesus pieces. Like, come on. Like, just his humor is great. I mean, and then you go to Fake Names, which Fake Names is just ridiculous. Like, the way that song comes in and it's like slow and menacing or whatever, and then like shit's so real, gotta use fake names. Like his hooks are just always impeccable. But then when the first verse changes, like, or really the second verse changes after he's like I walk through hell in these size 12s, like blah blah blah, and then it changes where he's like he does like the courtroom funeral fresh Givenchy my lapel, and then it just changes like pouring up 3 bricks 100, like just his flow and the beat switch is so sudden. It took me like aback. I didn't even know what to do the first time I heard it.
Well, I think a big change with this versus Pinata in this album's favor is that Pinata, and I didn't know this when I was actually listening to Pinata for a while, was that Pinata was an email collaboration, whereas this was actually, they were in studio the entire time they did this together, which is partially why it took so long to get made, was they only did it in studio sessions together. It's a credit to Pinata that you can't tell listening to it. Like, I mean, Madlib did Gibbs did shit with like in studio with some of his collaborators. Like, there's the great story of when he did Robes with Domo and Earl. When Gibbs did his verse, Jeff Weiss was there, and he reported like Earl and Domo were jumping up and down on the couch when Gibbs did his verse. They were so fucking hype. But that's the one where he like ends up singing at the end about.
Oh yeah.
I only think of you. On 2 occasions is when I'm drunk and when I'm blazing up. But
he's just so cool, like effortless.
Have you seen the tiny desk they did for this?
Oh, it's incredible.
It's
the
amazing.
Tiny desk is great.
They absolutely, like, if they toured with like El Michaels Affair and they did this album, I would pay like triple. I would pay an absurd amount of money to go see this. Fucking Trav saw these guys live. I'm so jealous.
Oh, I remember him telling the stories. Like, that's awesome. Like,
yeah, like honestly, like that's like one of the most like heartwarming is kind of like a corniest word to use, but like the fact that like Madlib's like the super reclusive dude, and like the story of like one of the stories of the 2010s has been like Freddie Gibbs like drawing this guy out into the world and like getting him to like be like more, like recognized as the legend he is, like, and getting him to put out these like, because he wouldn't be doing like interviews with the New Yorker and shit if it weren't for this.
Oh no, like, I mean, look, man, like Madlib on this and Gibbs together, there's almost, I mean, look, Pinata is one of my favorite rap albums of the decade, and that'll be on my end of the decade list, but in time, I really think this could climb up there as well, because I've had so much fucking fun listening to this album and just picking out
it's a
details.
super fun album. You can tell it was fun for them to make. You can tell Madlib was like challenge, like, again, I feel like they were more comfortable with each other, so you get stuff like there's a lot of beat switches on this album. They don't feel gratuitous to me. They feel natural. Like, there was a period where I guess I'm trying to think of what made it, like, I mean, I want to say it was honestly the Justin Timberlake album, the first one, the 2020 Experience or whatever, because everything on that had a beat switch. And then
there's a lot of beat switches.
Yeah, and then you had Mad City off Good Kid, Mad City or whatever was really popular, because that had like the super famous beat switch with the DJ MC Ike part.
MC Ike, yeah.
And so I felt like for a while there, everything had like a obligatory beat switch, and then you had like fucking At Long Last ASAP was like the pinnacle of that, where like every other track had like 5 beat. Well, no, Sicko Mode is the pinnacle of that.
Sicko Mode is the beat switch like popularity track
So I
for
guess
sure.
it still was going on, but I feel like, and you can tell when it's gratuitous. It doesn't feel gratuitous on this album, and I feel like part of that is that Gibbs and Madlib were so much more comfortable working together, and it took so long to come up with this album, and they didn't rush it, and it was just natural evolving chemistry. And Gibbs, I feel like, goes like, again, like you were talking about how he's so versatile, he can switch on a dime. I feel like all of his verses are really passionately delivered, skillfully delivered, technically in pocket. Like he touches on like something like flat tummy tea or whatever. There are some really hard political bars in there. Sometimes he might say something that you wish he didn't say.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah. I
but
mean,
I
look, there are to your point about the topics. Like this is not. I mean, it's a blast to listen to this album, but there's a lot of real stuff on here. I mean, Flat Tummy Tea and Education and even
yeah.
a song like Practice and Soul Right. Soul Right's a very like emotional song at the end. Like
Yeah. So
and
I'm
the way
trying to
he's
think.
singing on that is so raw and personal to me. Like I love that.
No, it's yeah, there's definitely been tracks in the like that's probably the best on record singing he's done because he's like normally when he's saying like he's sung before, but it's been like in a jokey sort of way, like
Hmm.
now on Later Gators on Fetty or
Right.
Basketball Wives on.
On yeah, on
We don't
Shadow of a
need to talk
Doubt.
too
Yeah.
much about Basketball Wives.
We don't. I
But
love
yeah,
that album, but I do not like that song.
but yeah, like the features are you. I mean, you can make fun like it's honestly like I always like I do like to say that I think Pinata is better, but when I break it down into terms of like the beats, I feel like the beats on this take more chances, even though there's like Harold. I still think like Thuggin' and Harold's are better than anything on here in terms of just like the simplicity and the cleanliness of those beats.
Right.
Whereas I think
And that's fair.
the beats on here are one of the things I didn't get on our way in was like I don't know if it was Madlib. I don't know if it was Diction or Celestephone or maybe Jermaine's. I was saying the beats aren't weird enough. It's like I think these beats are plenty weird.
These beats are very
Like,
like you can't listen to Massage Seats and tell me that's not a weird beat. And he's talk
massage and
it's a
massage.
weird beat, and he's talking about like leaning back in his like leaning back in like his expensive car on massage seats, like talking about like getting with like R&B chicks. It's the way he puts like the gangster rap flavor on these very weird eccentric beats is part of what's so compelling about it. Like his persona somehow works.
Well, I think it's always been the case with Gibbs. Like going back to although I mean like I can't speak to like record labels trying to kill me and all that stuff like the really
Right.
really early shit, but like going back to Miseducation at least has always been the way he's just kind of blended all this stuff like the super hard thug shit and the slightly conscious stuff and just generally being perceptive and charismatic and
Right.
just having come across in his raps. And I feel like he's just finally found a producer that's consistently interesting enough to match him. Whereas before, with his other stuff, it wasn't like the beats were not 100% always on his level. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. And Madlib is like so his beats have more personality than most rappers. So you finally found somebody who can match him, and it's just again, it's a match in the same way that Mad Villainy was a great match, but with a completely different sort of personality as the MC and honestly, a completely different sort of sound to the beats too, which is a testament to how versatile Madlib is. Because these beats sound nothing like Mad Villain, but they have the same sort of character, the same sort of intangible character that makes a Madlib beat great. And yeah, I'm again like the way he pairs these. We haven't even talked about Pac on Giannis.
Oh my God, Pac's great on it. Like just every feature fit. I mean, the education. I mean, Jesus Christ, like
Yeah,
Black Thought.
that's like a 7-year-old Most Def verse or Yasin verse or whatever, and it still
Yeah,
sounds like fresh as anything.
It
Thoughts
was like we said.
incredible.
Everybody was smiling and celebrating, but that kid was getting killed or something. Like, come on. Like,
And it's not on the album, but it's worth seeking out if you love this. Is the title track with Assassin?
right.
Yeah,
Well,
which
Assassin's great on features. So
and that's like maybe harder than anything on the album too. It's like it's like to the point where I don't know where I would have put it on the album because the album's pretty airtight as it is. And I kind of like the idea of it being like a lost, like great B-side or single or whatever. Because they also had those on for Pinata too. Because Pinata had Terrorist, which is one of the best Gibbs verses ever, and that was on a single. So seek that out if you like this. I'm still waiting on. Like, it would not be a fucking podcast if I didn't say this. Still, where the fuck's the beat? Where the fuck's the instrumentals?
No, the instrumentals for this album are fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and I need the instrumental version, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I also would love to listen to the instrumentals.
And normally, Matt's really good about getting those out, but it might be because he's on like a different, like he's not on Stones Throw. Like, I know the label situation with this album's weird, so maybe that's why the instrumentals aren't out yet. But need those instrumentals. This, now I'm thinking I might have it a little low, but again, I haven't listened to it as much as I would have liked to. But I'm probably going to listen to it after this podcast because I realize that there's absolutely nothing I dislike about it. I like it more every time I listen to it. And I feel like people were a little disappointed when it came. Some people were, but I guess that would just come with the fact there was such a long wait for it. But I really don't understand what there is to be disappointed, nor in like the build up to it. Like the songs that they released, there was like every song was better than the last. Like
seriously,
Assassin was amazing. Fucking Bandana was amazing, and then Giannis was like, and Crime Pays was the video.
Oh, Crime Pays is such a fun song.
Yeah,
like I mean, I said this at the top when talking about this record, but this album and Freddie Gibbs as a rapper really has everything I want because he just all of his different, like, you know, from the singing and the rapping and the melodies, the hooks, but also he's able to give you like, you know, quote unquote conscious stuff and like really hard hitting, like splash water in your face type of bars, and he's just everything that I like in a rapper at this point. You know, he can do all of the rapper tropes and more, and also just is an incredible lyricist, incredible flow, and the beats are amazing. It's everything I want in a rap album in 2019, and it's my most played album by far.
My number one album is maybe not, honestly, thinking about it, the Carly album might be my most played album, but if not my most played, my second most played, definitely my most appreciated album is Billy Woods and Kenny Siegel, Hiding Places, which has a great Nodema review if you haven't read that. I don't know if he changed it or not. He seemed to be rather drunk when he wrote it. But it's basically...
No, he wrote it. It's still up there. Like, I remember reading it.
Yeah, this album is dark, fucking uncompromising, and one of the most well-written, well-rapped things I've ever heard. And there's so much, like, it's I would say it's a good start. I can't decide whether or not it's a good starting point or impenetrable, which is hard for me with Billy Woods, because I've recommended him to people before, and people generally, I guess, find him too dense, I suppose. And this or abstract, and this album has probably the best instrumentals I can think of him having rapped over since Dour Candy, but the concepts are still pretty abstract. Yet I keep coming back to them. I keep coming back to the themes that he's going over and over, the way he fleshes them out, the topics that he touches on. It's like he basically, like, this album is as suffocating as that famous, like, it's called Hiding Places. There's a track called Spider Hole, and the image that's out of a lot of this is that famous scene from Breaking Bad where Walter White is looking for the money he hid up in the crawl space, and he can't find, and Skylar already got rid of it, I believe, to pay off Ted, I guess. And like you have that shot that just like the walls are literally closing in around him. There are so many. There's also a track called Crawl Space on here, and there are so many scenes that he paints just with fucking words on this album that are just like walls closing in around people. The first track is, as best I can tell, about an Iraqi soldier, about an American soldier in Iraq. The whole operation is underwater. There's like a botched robbery, a failing marriage, everything. They're all like little short stories in the way Woods writes them. and they all just seem to be about failing situations, people trying to hide from situations, and it's a dark album. It's incredibly dark, but it sticks with you in a way thanks to the instrumentals, which are more inviting than the music, and the way Wood. And there's just something about the Woods is not abrasive on this album. Have you listened to it?
I have. I actually listened to it when it came out, and then very recently again, and I like forgot to rate it, but I thought it was great. I had listened to Billy Wood's albums in the past and liked them. Um, they're very, and I'm trying to think. I for the life of me cannot think of the artist who he reminds me of. Um, shit. Like I'm blanking, and I'm not. Well, he's in Arm and Hammer with
Yeah, he's
Elucid.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, those two remind me of each other.
Oh, that
And so that makes sense. They're the same thing. But I had listened to like Dour Candy and History Will Absolve Me and the one from a couple years ago, Known Unknowns. Like I had listened to all those albums, and they're all very good. Like in terms of like abstract and like experimental stuff from the East Coast, he's one of the guys that I will listen to. Like
no, this his
more
album on our way in.
like more than a lot of other artists. I don't think he's impenetrable, but I could see why someone would.
You did rate it, by the way. Maybe
No,
you
I
just
said I know. I rated it just like literally 10 minutes ago. Like I was like, oh fuck, because I had listened to it when it came out early in the year, and then I was like, oh, this is really good, and then I hadn't gone back to it. But when you mentioned the Nodema review, I came back to it, and I was like, oh fuck, I didn't rate this. Like, oh, this was really good. So I had to give it a very positive rating. But he's such a great lyricist, but it's more than just, hey, his lyrics are good. It's more of just like, I think of it as like poetry in a sense, you know,
I
with
mean,
with,
yeah,
with
it's
how he
sort of
talks.
like prose poetry, I think. Um,
And I'm not good at like talking about that, so I'm trying to like feed you here. Like, on how, what do you think?
yeah, it's kind of like prose poetry, I would say, in that he's very insightful. He gave a really good interview about his writing process circa Today I Wrote Nothing, where it was just like he would sit and just observe in like bars and such, and just like let people talk to him, and just kind of that was his inspiration process when he wasn't when he when he was blocked. Essentially was just observation and absorption, and just and you get the impression that he just like takes it all in and spits it back out in a way that's like his perspective is unique. His perspective is unique. I'm saying this in a very dumb sort of way, but it's like nobody else really writes or raps like him in the same, and it feels very ground level, very eye level, and you get the impression that he sees things that other people don't
Mm-hmm.
in situations, that he's looking a lot closer. And for him to express what he wants to express, he's not going to say things necessarily straightforwardly. Because he's in too many details. So it's like you kind of have to recalibrate yourself a little. That's why I think it maybe impenetrable is a little strong, but I feel like you kind of have to recalibrate yourself a little bit to listen to him or Lucid in sort of the same way that like David Simon talked about The Wire as like he was trying to retrain viewers to like from what they were used to watching like in cop dramas and formula cop shows or whatever. It's like, which I thought was kind of a pompous and pretentious way to say it a little bit, but it's also true in a bit of a way. It's like that you had to retrain yourself to like view this a different way because the show is trying to express something different than just a procedural. In the way I think a Billy Woods or a Lucid or Arm & Hammer or whatever rap verse is trying to say something a bit different than your average rap verse or your, like it's a narrative, but it's also kind of, and I feel like I'm putting a bit too much burden on it that makes it feel like work, which is not what I want to do. It makes it kind of feel like a shitty recommendation because ultimately I want this to be like a recommendation for like people who have not went and checked these things out. Although I think your list is probably more effective than mine in that way. Because I feel like most people who've listened to this have probably already heard this album. But if you haven't, yeah, go fucking seek it out, because even though it's depressing, and I feel like we've done these 3 years now. 1 year it was like my best of the year was like John Wayne rap album too, and it's this year. I'm trying to think what the other one was. I've had some pretty depressing ass choices.
You have, but that's pretty on brand. I mean,
I'm trying to think of what was it. What was my last year album?
I thought you had Kids See Ghosts as your number one.
No.
It was up there. It was up. I know it was up there.
Was it Daytona? No.
I don't think it. I think
No,
Daytona was up.
It was Arm & Hammer. It was Arm & Hammer. It was
Arm & Hammer. So there you go. So Billy Woods.
There we go. I've had
2
three
years.
depressing Billy Woods 2 years in a row, and then John Wayne. So yeah depressing ass angry rap albums.
No,
although
Billy
I did have again, like I said, this does not go very well with the Carly album.
Just the juxtaposition of the two is
but,
about as wild as it gets.
So yeah, but there's a lot of. I don't want to put too much of a burden on this, because even if you don't understand what he's saying initially and like the reference he's making or whatever, I feel like there's, in the same sort of way that I kind of started listening to Doom or whatever, even like most rappers, if you don't get what they're saying, there's like the one thing that you latch onto that'll keep you coming back. And like one line, one bit of delivery or whatever, I feel like that's all it ever really takes with a good hip hop song, rap song, whatever. It's just the one thing. And it could even be in the beats. I think you need to be in the, and I feel like Kenny Siegel's instrumentals they're great. They're laid back. They're jazzy. He creates really lush soundscapes that are good fit for Woods. They're not as abrasive as the Arm & Hammer stuff. They are, and they're a little different than what Blockhead would give to Woods. So it's a little bit of a change of pace for him as well. It's a great album. I won't say it's for everybody. I mean, you kind of have to be in a bit of a dark place to listen to it, but it's, if you like find yourself a little pissed off, I would say definitely check it out. That's really, I don't have a strong closer for that, but yeah.
No, it's a great choice, and I haven't listened to it, nearly as much as I should have this year. But Billy Woods is like I said, he's an excellent rapper. He's kind of like a poet in my view, anyway. So, I would also give it a strong endorsement.
I would say it's something to listen to after you like had a healthy diet of the news or something bad happens, because there's a real cathartic quality to listening to something like that. I mean, that's more true of Arm & Hammer, but it's also like, because I feel like there's a reactive quality to the Arm & Hammer stuff, whereas this is more introspective, because there's also like, it feels like he's writing stories here, whereas the Arm & Hammer stuff is a little more about commentary, I guess, and not being passive, whereas this feels a little more like he's, again, writing stories. But although whether or not these... That's the other thing about Woods, is that how much of it comes from direct personal experience, you'll never know, because he's very elusive. Not to be confused with elusive.
That was good.
So yeah, great album. Don't listen to it when you're in too good of a mood. That's when you should listen to the Carly album. But yeah, great. I think this was overall a super strong year that I think had a really good balance of stuff, and that like not everything was doom and gloom, and not like. But once again, I managed to pick the most depressing possible number one pick.
Well, really, really strong year. I agree with you on that. And if there's one thing that I can encourage the listeners of this podcast to do, all like 40 of them, is that if they haven't seen Uncut Gems already, please see Uncut Gems. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
All right, and I will probably I should take that advice, because you're not the first person to have said it. And that's all we've got for you. And hopefully sooner we will also have a best of the decade episode with you that will probably be 7 hours long, once we factor in all the times Horse will interrupt. Oh wait, is that with Horse or Trav?
It's I thought we were doing it with Trav. We could do it with both, I guess. You could do it.
If we do it with both, it'll be like 15 hours long. We'll do it with Trav.
We'll do it.
All right. We're going to be doing the Trav. All right. So we will see you then. Until then, that he's Optimal / Caleb. I am Patrick. also Patrick, and we are living off borrowed time. All right, peace.